Hello. Good evening from cold London with that. Noelle will be joining us shortly. We're going to do another installment of Mystery Grape Live. We got the diploma exams for D3 for a lot of folks that are coming in. Oops, there's Noelle. Get her. So a lot of folks are getting a little nervous about it. When Noelle's here, she'll walk us through our regular breathing exercise to make sure we breathe before exams.
Oh, I remember that feeling, don't you?
Yes.
Oh. These last few weeks are tough, guys, if you're studying. And the end is in sight, which is great, but the end is in sight, which is like petrifying. So it's double-edged sword.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those that are new to watching our Mystery Grape Live, and also, we do a little bit with the Mystery Grape game on our IG stories, but this format's a little different. I'm going to read Noelle some clues about a wine, and we're going to kind of talk through some of our deductive process. The big thing that we really try our best not to do, and I know in exam time it's so hard, is to not jump to conclusions about the grape. As we work through the clues, we want to think about what does these clues tell us about the nature of the region it's growing in, the growing conditions, any type of viticulture or winemaking that might be in play, and start thinking about how those clues work as evidence of a crime, this wine, this grape. And then towards the end, then we start thinking about grapes. So hopefully this process as we walk through it will be helpful. So this is a wine that Noelle considers her nemesis. So
It is.
We'll put her on the hot seat with the deducting.
I have called it everything but what it is. So yeah, let's get through this, and maybe you can give me some tips on how to nail it next time.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what we can do. And you guys are also welcome to participate as well. Those that are joining us here live, you can put in the comments, what you're thinking. I'll go along as we're going with the clues too, if something's jumping in mind. Again, we just try not to jump to a grape real quick. But if you see something and like, oh, hey, that winemaking, that note reminds me of something, this like winemaking.
Yep.
Which there may be one. Spoiler alert. But all right. All right, ready for the clues?
I am, Amber.
Let's go.
Okay.
All right. Clue number 1, red cherry. And I'm going to try to comment a little bit more on the nature of the fruit more, because when you're tasting a wine, you really want to think, you're thinking cherries, but what type of cherries? Is it fresh cherries that you just got from the grocer? Is it canned cherries? Like you're going to make a pie? Is it dried cherries? So this one I'm going to say is fresh and even a little tart.
Okay.
So fresh red cherries.
Okay.
Red plum. And I would say both fresh and dried. And there's one note that's a little unique for me with this wine is, for me, it reminds me of sour Asian plums, like the plums that you make plum sauce out of.
Okay.
So, grocery stores, metropolitan market in the U.S., had opportunity to try them and tasted it. It's like, yes, that is it for me. So sour Asian plum is how I would describe it. But most folks would just say red plum.
Okay.
Red flowers, I would say dried red flowers, not fresh. So those first 3 clues I gave you, fresh red cherries, sour Asian plums, dried red flowers, anything popping in with those first 3 clues?
Well, you've got some fresh and some dried, which is interesting. I would think that if this was a particularly warmer, hotter climate, the fruit character would be different. It would be jammier. It would be really ripe, lush. But if it was a super cool climate, maybe it would be more tart. So I'm thinking this is more moderate climate. There's no black fruits that you've mentioned, which I'm making a note of. Maybe they're coming, but there's definitely more focus on these red fruits and red flowers.
Yeah.
So that's making me think of a couple of varieties right now. But I'm gonna hold my They're in the lineup. When the suspects come in the room and they're in the lineup, I've got a couple of them in the lineup, but I'm not ready to say that's the one.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely want in on that moderate climate. That's great. Excellent. All right. Tobacco. And I would say it's fresh tobacco, not dried tobacco.
Okay.
At least with this example. Obviously, you could get an example that could go dry. So with
Okay.
tobacco, you know, a lot of people associate that straight with a tertiary note.
Sure.
But in younger examples, it could be more fresh tobacco, and that's worth
Okay.
noting.
Would you call that green tobacco?
This one I would say is necessarily like green. Well, actually, maybe a little bit towards a green on it. I mean, anybody that gets opportunity to go to, you know, North Carolina, Virginia in the U.S., you know, some of the fresh tobacco fields, there's green, real green, but then there's like, you know, when's getting ready to harvest.
In your smoke shop. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Dill, and it's definitely fresh dill. It is not dried dill, and it is not dill pickles.
Okay.
Fresh dill. Go to your grocery store, fresh dill.
Okay.
Okay. The next clue is vanilla, and I would say it's a fresh vanilla bean.
Okay.
Not our McCormick spice.
Okay, so kind of a better quality vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts with those last three clues? The fresh, slightly green tobacco, fresh dill, and then vanilla bean.
So those are bing, 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 pointing me, the dill especially is pointing me to American oak. That is, for many people, a key marker for using American oak as opposed to like French oak. And there are certain styles of wine in the world that really focus on American oak.
Yeah.
Personally, I struggle to pick it up. I struggle to pick the dill up. So I do think one of my exercises needs to be going and buying that fresh dill and working with that and trying to see if I can get that in the wine, because it's kind of a blind spot. I can identify herbal notes often, but the dill, picking that out, and if I was able to pick dill out, I think that would be a really huge benefit in identifying certain styles of wine.
Yep,
so
most definitely.
Yeah, so this is oak. You know, maybe this is American and French, but there is definitely some American oak on this.
Yeah, I mean, with dill, I think, and I had this totally early in my wine studies, because for one thing, I hate pickles. So when I think dill, I think of dill pickles, and that was like, ugh. And so it took me a while. Like, I didn't even want to try dishes that had dill on it because I was assuming they were adding pickle flavor. And it was like my wife finally convinced me. It's like, no, dill is not like dill pickles with that. And so trying fresh dill was a huge eye opener for me, because it is a little bit herbal. I would actually describe it as almost like a floral herbal note to it. You know, not as pungent as rosemary. It's more subtle, but there is a floral character. So when you're saying that you pick up herbal notes, and it's, you know, probably steering you towards other directions, that could be actually dill that you're picking up too.
Probably. And I do need to hone in on that better, because I suspect that my suspect is something that I always veer off kind of at the last minute to something else. So, okay. So those
What's
are
another
aromas
thing?
And flavors, right?
If you suspect, right now those are aromas and flavors. Yep. If you suspect American oak, what's another thing that you could look for? You don't want to necessarily talk yourself into finding a clue that's not there, but in the back of your mind, is there something else that might be like, could this help affirm where I'm going
I would be looking for coconut as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would
coconut
be
definitely
a popular marker for American oak. Dill and coconut, which really does not sound appetizing to me. That combo, I mean, what the hell? So, yeah. So
now with coconut too, keep in mind, it might not be like you're thinking, okay, here's my coconut suntan lotion. You know, there's some wines described as that. But when you think about it, there's a creaminess in your mouthfeel with coconut, like coconut milk. Okay. And so it could be showing up as that creaminess in the mouthfeel versus you picking up coconut flavors. Okay. So that's another thing to kind of think of, because that's one of the benefits of putting a wine in oak, is it helps kind of add some texture, add some depth to it with the lactones and the tannins that are extracted. So that's another thing to kind of think of. Okay. All right. Now for the structure clues. Okay. Medium ruby. Okay. Medium plus intensity aromatics. Okay. Dry. So those are first three. Okay. And then here you'll notice a pattern. Medium to medium plus acid. Medium to medium plus chalky tannins. Okay. Medium to medium plus body. It's like medium to medium plus, medium to medium plus, and
Okay.
then medium to high alcohol.
So we're a range almost across the board with those structure clues. Okay.
It's a
And the
range,
cannons are,
but there's something missing. What's missing with those clues? You know, if I'm saying medium to medium plus, you're missing some big things.
yeah, you're missing high.
Yeah.
Obviously. And some grape varieties that I often mistake this wine for should be high. They should be high tannins, high acidity. So that medium to medium plus, just right in that middle range, should hone me in on certain things. And again, with the medium ruby, can that fluctuate, would you say?
It could definitely fluctuate.
Okay.
Yeah.
But pretty standard, it's right in the middle.
Yeah, what I'm doing is basically a young example, not fairly young. Like, for instance, tonight I have a 2016 example of it, and it's actually a little even darker. But I'm going to air the Wested Diploma text goes medium ruby, so I'm going to air towards that on it. But definitely with age, you're going to get paler colors. You're going to get some more garnet in on that. But one of the things to comment on between the medium plus and how, you know, a lot of us, you know, kind of go astray towards laterals is I think a lot of people are afraid of saying medium plus. It's like you almost want things to be high, and you feel like if it's either high or low. It's like we want to go to the extreme because we feel like we're wussing out if we do medium, and like we doubt ourselves.
Yeah.
On it. And so that's a tough one. Like for particularly saying medium plus for me is tough to say medium plus. It's like,
really?
I'm underselling it. It has to be high, or I'm overselling it. It has to be medium.
I default to that, man. I'm just like medium plus. I think it's hard for me to just charge in there. This is high. But just a reminder also, when Amber is saying medium to medium plus, for WSET exams, you need to like pick one.
Yes.
You cannot give a range, unfortunately. You need to, or at least for diploma exams, maybe level 3. Yeah, but you definitely, you do not want to
you
get
got to commit.
You will get no marks for that. So plant your flag somewhere. Okay, so based on all of those clues,
do you want me to repeat them? Want me to repeat the clues?
Yeah, please, because some other people just popped in. And,
all right. So the clues: red cherry, little tart; red plum, particularly sour Asian plum; dried red flowers; tobacco on the fresher tobacco side; fresh dill; and vanilla, fresh vanilla bean. Then the structure clues to repeat: medium ruby, medium plus intensity, dry, medium to medium plus acid, medium to medium plus chalky tannins, which we didn't comment on that, so we might want to talk on the chalky tannins, medium to medium plus body, and medium to high alcohol.
Okay. Before I go down my route, I'm curious if anybody has any suggestions or thoughts. Somebody has already popped up with the answer a little bit ago. And you're familiar, is it Tim Geyser or Tim Geyser, the MS who does the evil dwarves?
I'm probably gonna get it wrong, but I'm gonna guess Geyser. But
okay,
I read his stuff, so I just see his name.
Yes,
and he's brilliant.
So he has done a fantastic write-up on kind of these wines and this middle of the road ruby color, thinner skinned, red grapes, and why maybe I call them false friends rather than evil dwarves, and you call them laterals, which sounds much more professional than false friends or evil dwarves. But this wine, like I mentioned at the beginning, I have called literally everything but what it was. And I went down the wrong path on my D3 exam for it. Now, it's not like I veered off and went Riesling or something, but thank God. But there's certain characteristics that I get in both wines. So let's talk about maybe I know what this is now.
Mhm.
And yeah, so somebody just said, yes, it is hard not to go to Spain with American oak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So American
Agreed.
oak, you can think of Zinfandel. A lot of American Zinfandels have it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could be a lateral. Would you go Zinfandel here or not? And if you weren't going with Zinfandel, why would you not go Zinfandel?
Zinfandel is not one of my false friends for this wine. The fruit character is with Zinfandel. You tend to get kind of different. You get your black fruit, you get your blue fruit, you get your red fruit. The fruit character is usually really ripe and fresh and juicy. And you mentioned dried in here,
Yeah.
and I I don't get that overt oak in a lot of Zinfandel. It might be there, but I certainly don't. Usually the fruit kind of overwhelms that herbalness for me. Zinfandel would definitely be on the high side for alcohol. And if this is a range, that makes me think, so yeah, I would expect this fruit character to have like a sweeter, on the finish, like you
Yeah.
say, the kiss that sends you off. I would expect that sweet fruit on a Zinfandel. And from what you have said and from what I am tasting, does not have a sweet finish. So
Yeah. It's definitely a dry, savory, a little tangy finish in a lot of examples, I think, for this wine versus Zinfandel, which you're spot on. I mean, we talked about it with our last Mystery Grape one, Zinfandel, the nature of that uneven ripeness. So you do get that range. And we're a little bit more narrowly focused there. So great call with that. Yeah. Other ones that popped up, Australian Shiraz. That's another one that can use American oak. Penfolds was always a classic one. They have several wines that still are American oak, but they do some that have a mix of American and French, but that's more the classic Aussie Barossa Shiraz.
Okay. And again, that would not be one of my suspects. I'm not getting black fruit out of this. I'm not getting that jammy fruit. Aussie Shiraz definitely tends to a deeper color. We don't want to put a lot of stock in color, but that would be another clue. A little bit more purple often than just the ruby. Again, with the high alcohol, I would expect Aussie Shiraz, unless you're in those cooler pockets, to be higher and warming. So,
yeah, and spice too. Both Zinfandel and Australian Shiraz spice.
Yeah.
Another common lateral for these wines are Bordeaux varieties. Some people feel it's more left bank is what they confuse with. Some people feel it's more right bank. Is there anything that would steer you towards that or steer you away from a left bank or right bank Bordeaux? Or a New World example of those varieties?
No, I mean, that again is not usually a suspect for me. With left bank, I definitely get more of the graphite and gravel, which I'm not getting here. And the tannins would, you've said medium to medium plus on a lot of these structural clues. And left bank Bordeaux is more than likely going to be medium plus to high on across the board. So unless you're getting just a basic Bordeaux, you're not going to venture into that medium territory for anything. So they're going to be more structured and, what was you said medium plus intensity on the nose. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be my reason for not going left bank Bordeaux.
Yeah.
You
would expect high tannins with Cab. Maybe right bank Merlot. But the thing with Merlot is a lot of it is there's a roundness and there's a polish to Merlot that this wine has got some more edges, I think, to it. Again, there's a tanginess I associate with this wine. For a lot of tasters, though, this is where it gets down to trying to determine French oak from American oak. And with French oak, they both have vanilla, but the vanilla is a little bit more pronounced, I would say, with French oak, I feel, and also more baking spices. I mean, French oak makes me feel like I'm walking into a French bakery. The smells around there. American oak, again, get a little bit of that roundness, but not as much with that. And then finally, the lateral that both you and I mess up quite a bit with this wine is Italy.
Yeah.
Why? Tell me why this is not a Chianti, because I can tell you many reasons why I think it would be a Chianti.
Same. And I
Yeah.
can tell you why I put Chianti on my
Yeah.
exam.
Yeah.
So it's that herbalness. It's the cherry. With Sangiovese, I mean, it's cherry for days. It's tart cherry. It's
Mm-hmm.
herbal. It's dried flowers. Sometimes I actually do get tobacco in Sangiovese. But it's just it's the structure. It's definitely, but you know, let's be honest, Sangiovese, if I'm thinking clearly, which sometimes in exam, you
Yeah.
know, places you're not, it really should be medium plus to high.
Yeah.
Like you really, those tannins and that acidity should be hello,
Mm-hmm.
and not medium, not medium.
Yeah.
But I definitely gravitate towards Sangiovese with stuff like this. And it's because of that fruit profile that's a little bit more tart, a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
sour, and that herbal note. And again, I think if I practice more with fresh
Mm-hmm.
dill, I
Mm-hmm.
could differentiate between kind of savory herbs that do show up in Sangiovese and dill,
Yeah.
because you would not see Sangiovese with, you know, hardcore American oak on it.
Yeah. And
So,
the herbs in a lot of Italian wines do tend to be more dried than fresh. You know, you think
mm-hmm,
of, baked under the Tuscan sun, kind of that dried herbal aspect to it.
mm-hmm,
This region with our wine there, which I think a lot of people probably figured it out by now.
mm-hmm.
So, we'll go ahead and say we have Tempranillo from Rioja. A lot of people think it's
Was a
warm. Spain.
Crianza, so
Yep,
definitely
Crianza.
more wussy.
People think it's a warm. I mean, Spain's hot. But
Yeah.
what a lot of them don't realize is, parts of, especially where the really nice Riojas often come from, there's altitude in that area. Rioja Alta, Alavesa.
Mm-hmm.
There's some Atlantic influence coming in. So it's not as hot necessarily as you think. Yes, when you go down to Rioja Oriental, more Mediterranean, that's really hot. But that's where
Yeah.
a lot of Garnacha is, and that's a little bit
Right.
blending on it. My wine is a Reserva, one of my favorite producers, Cune. And this is a producer also that examiners like.
Mm.
And a trouble spot with Rioja is there's a lot of producers that use American oak, and there's a lot of producers that use French, and there's a lot of producers that tend to mix. Well, going through the list of past exam wines, it was interesting with that, in that they tend to be pretty consistent about using ones that use a fair amount of American oak. Let me just read off some names. October, the one that you had, was Azadi Reserva, majority American oak, 70 to 75% usually. La Rioja Alta 904 Gran Reserva, fantastic one. That's one that you're going to start getting more of those tertiary notes, the dried tobacco, more dried flowers. That was a mix in the mix flight for January 2019, mix January 2018. So they really love this wine, La Rioja Alta. That one's American oak. In fact, they actually are one of the states that have an in-house cooperage, just so they can control the quality of the oak, make their own barrels. So stunner. I mean, I recommend any of the La Rioja Alta wines for studying. They did in the Spain country flight, June 18, also from La Rioja Alta, the Vina Ardanza Reserva, that was in a Spain country flight with a Rias Fascis and a Priorat. That one's American oak.
Yeah.
Then Cune, my producer, they did the Gran Reserva, the Imperial, another killer bottle. Thoroughly recommend. That was the mixed flight in June 16. So you see 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. They love testing on Rioja.
Interesting.
Now,
And you have said
every year.
Reserva and Gran Reserva. You have not there. So Crianza, not to say that it wouldn't show up, but there does seem to be a pattern of, getting in the longer aging. And so maybe students can pick out the tertiary notes. Yeah. Okay. So
and more burnt American oak with that.
Yeah. So they're not trying to trick you. If you can learn to pick up American oak, which I need to do, I honest to God, I was thinking about this last night. I don't drink a lot of Rioja. And when you don't drink a lot of something, how the hell do you expect you're going to be able to pick it up in a blind flight? And you and I've talked about this. People tend to avoid that bottom shelf oh, I'll know what that white, if I get a white zin on my flight, I'll know what that is, or I'll know what that cheap Chardonnay is. You may not unless you try it and get your own markers and get your own palate going, because, you know, I don't know. I don't drink a lot of Rioja, and maybe I need to change that, because I actually didn't mind this one, and I think it was like $15 or something. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's worth knowing American oak. No,
yeah,
again, caveat as always, nobody knows what's going to be an exam. Just because this is what the examiners have done in the past doesn't mean it's what they're
yeah,
going to do in the future. So they could do whatever they want for whatever on there. As any wine that's mentioned in the text is fair game. The
yep,
only thing is that we would tell you just to be assured of is that the examiners aren't trying to trick you. They're going to try to give you things that are distinctive that say this grape, this region.
yeah. And what you just said with the American oak, that should definitely be a flag for leading you down to Tempranillo. And somebody just suggested, yes, get your barefoot Moscato. Like, yeah, that.
No American oak there, but God, that would be hideous.
But yeah, it's important to try these things. And you know, if you don't want a whole bottle of barefoot Moscato sitting around, get a couple friends that will do some tasting with you. But yeah, I think it's important to keep trying these wines. And but honest to God, I have called this every single thing.
Yeah.
But
I go to Italian all the time, and it's because I, you know, don't want to say medium plus. I want to say it's high tannins, high alcohol, or, you know, high acid.
Mm-hmm.
With the tannins, the chalky versus sandpaper. This was another thing that Nick Jackson, again, awesome book.
Love him. Yeah.
And talking with other people kind of got me honing in a little bit more on the tannins of this Tempranillo being more chalky. You know, he spots it on the cheeks. I get a little bit on my tongue more, which kind of tips me off to Shiraz. And so I have to kind of focus this as a Shiraz, not purple color, not as big. Well, Sangio, somebody gave me the tip that Sangiovese tannins taste like having your cat lick your hand, that sandpaper tongue of a cat. And so I kid you not, while every time I have a Sangiovese, I try to convince my cat to lick my hand while I'm tasting it. And it works. It kind of clicks in your brain that little bit of sandpaper nature, Sangio, sandpaper, kind of clicks there, versus the more chalky dustiness of Tempranillo. So it's helped me a little bit more with making those calls in there, because again, I'm not necessarily getting on the cheek, I'm getting more on the tongue for me, but thinking of the nature of the tannins has helped a bit.
Good. Yeah, that's a good one.
One last thing I want to leave folks with, because we're talking a lot about American oak, you know, so some of the producers I mentioned with Rioja, I mean, La Rioja, Alta, Cune, really, really good producers to get your hands on the Riojas to get an idea of American oak with Tempranillo. If you want to try with other wines, kind of doing my little research list here, Penfolds, as we mentioned before, particularly their Ben 28 Kalima, Shiraz, and if you want to get pricey, the Ben 389, their Cab Shiraz blend and Grange. The rest of them, they tend to do more mix of American and French. Oh yeah, Lopez de Heredia, another killer Rioja producer. J. Lore Cabernet, little cheap $12 Cabernet from Paso. They have a tradition of using a lot of American oak. So that is that one, you talk about that creaminess of coconut. That J. Lore Paso Cab is a great one to get an idea of that mouthfeel. It's still high tannins with, you know, being a cab, majority cab, but you do get some of that creaminess from American oak. If you want to go pricier, Silver Oak, classic cab with American oak. Rombauer, their Zinfandel often has a bit of American oak. They actually even use a little bit of American oak mixed with French for their Chardonnay. So coconut. I get a little with Rombauer Chardonnay. I do get a little bit actual coconut with it, and it clicked once I looked into their technical notes that they use a little bit of American oak. Also with Zinfandel, Ridge. Now they will do usually a mix a little bit with French, but their classic style, Paul Draper style, he loves American oak. So a lot of Ridge will have majority American oak. I think there's just a few that will have some French. So those are some wines to look for that are good to try. But again, get fresh still. While I'm hungry, because it's dinner time here in London, one other food item helps with my Rioja calls. This was from Gilsam. Hoisin sauce. That kind of tanginess, that savory tanginess. There's that savory tanginess with Rioja. And so I get a little bit of this, you know, that tartness with the red fruit, and then
the plum sauce.
You know, yeah. So something to think about. with that.
Something to think about. Those are great examples for helping to pick up American oak for people who struggle like me.
Yeah.
And I would also like to just take a second to alleviate some people's concerns who do have exams coming up. Let's say you did get this on an exam, and let's say you did, purely hypothetically, call it Chianti or Sangiovese. There are enough similarities, as we just described, that you will, if you're using the cherry and you're using herbal and tannins are medium plus and dry, all of those structural clues, and then even going into your quality assessment, more than likely, if you're describing a very good Chianti and this turned out to be a very good Rioja, you're going to have enough overlap and enough points that you probably will still do pretty darn good on that question. So don't, again, come down to like, oh my God, I can never nail that wine. That's okay. As long as you're kind of having one of those similar suspects, having one of those false friends that have enough in common, there's a reason we mix these things up. There's a reason why, this gets called, some of his other false friends I thought were a little bit odd, but Sangiovese is a common one. And like you went over,
I've called it Gamay before. I thought it was a Cru Beaujolais before. I've totally
and again, you're going to have enough similarities that if you do miss identifying the wine exactly correctly, again, that's 1 point, 2 point on your exam. You have a lot of other points that you can gather up and get some good marks. So take a deep breath if you don't identify correctly.
Yeah.
All
right. We will see you guys next week. And
we're going to be on Sunday next week.
Stories.
We'll be on Sunday. We'll put out
Sunday.
some verbiage on that. But thanks, and hopefully this was helpful.
Yeah. Take care.
Take care. Good luck.